It's time. You know what it's time for.
What time is it?
They don't know what time it is, but we know. All right, so 5 days ago, I started preparation for the Delayed Blast Fireball from the Heroes' Feast Cookbook, and this is it. It's pretty foreboding for me. So, some clarification on a few things. I am not a huge drinker. Neither are you.
Not really.
We don't drink much. So I thought it would be fun to take that fact and try out different D&D themed drinks and have some fun with it since we don't do it often. Okay, well, the AC came on and we had to wait for it to turn off because it's very loud. So, all right. So, drink, like I said. Cup. All right, so this is the Delayed Fireball from Heroes' Feast. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
All right. We're starting off with a taste. All right, I am nervous about this.
Same time, or you want to go first?
3, 2, 1. Oh my god.
So it's about 30% alcohol. It's got a nice burn.
I see why it's Delayed Fire Blast because those pepper flakes really start kicking in. I mean, you get that initial taste of cinnamon. It reminds me of that gum that I used to get all the time.
The dragon gum.
The dragon breath, yeah. But it definitely has a lot more of a punch. It also makes me think of a tincture that I used to drink. Wow, it is really living in the back of my throat, though.
It's all the way, it's like here already and settling.
I've got like this ring of hot. Like that feeling you usually get in the top of your mouth when you eat spicy food, and it's living in the back of my throat.
For full disclosure, I used to eat fireballs as a kid, which are like pure cinnamon anyway. So
it's for how strong, for me at least, the non-drinker that I am, as strong as the alcohol was going in, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of alcohol flavor. It's a lot of the other stuff that's in it.
It definitely still has the cinnamon nail polish remover going on, but I will say that adding in the water mixture at the end where you dissolve the brown sugar definitely helps kind of temper it a bit. So let's go for a second drink and see if that makes a difference. Good Lord!
Yes.
Okay, here we go. I'm a lot more timid about this. Like, my body's going, don't do it.
Blep. It's the whole face this time. The whole face is like...
You can feel exactly where the liquid is going. It's like... Ugh.
And now it's sitting on the back of the throat with the constant burn. It's coming out of the top of my head.
More?
I barkeep. Arr.
I'd make a terrible barkeep. I'd be the barkeep who's like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? Oh, yeah, now I feel it in my chest. I feel like this is reverse dragon's breath.
Yeah, it reminds me
like, instead of it coming out, it's going down.
This is definitely on call for like egg sandwiches afterward.
I should have brought in bottles of water to go with this. But again, it's not my little lipstick ring. It's not as bad as like I was imagining. I actually, as someone who doesn't do a lot of heavy cinnamon spice, and I also don't eat a lot of cinnamon candy or anything like that, not in a long time anyway, I enjoy this. I'm going to try to sound like I know what I'm talking about here. It is smooth. It's not like some wines where it, feels like you're licking the bottom of a buttery barrel. But I see why it's a delayed fireball, because when you first drink it, it's definitely cinnamon flavored drink. And then it hits you like you just decided to snort a line of red ants with your palate. So
in liquid form.
That's my refined review of this drink. He's on his second one, and I'm still like babying this one.
She put it to here. It only goes to about here, so it's not like a lot.
Mine's right here. So.
But I took like half on the first drink.
Oh wow.
And held it there for a moment. And just kind of let it wash over my senses. And it's really good. I love the cinnamon in it. You can taste a little bit of the brown sugar as well, which is, you're supposed to. It's good. The pepper flakes definitely kick in after that. So pepper flakes, like I used to put them on pizza, like all the time. So those kind of the red pepper flakes. And there was one more item, of course, cinnamon sticks.
Yeah. Oh my god! Just letting it touch my lips. And on the tip of my tongue, my face went, huh. It's bourbon, red pepper flakes, 5 cinnamon sticks broken in half, and then you let that sit for 5 days, and then you take brown sugar and add hot water, let it sit to the side and cool off, and then you strain the mixture into the brown sugar water, and then mix it all together. So, yeah. Maybe that's why it tastes like a tincture to me. Tincture?
Because the bourbon.
Because of that infusion.
It with brandy with tinctures, but
so anything that's strong that, strips it, makes it cry, and can double as nail polish remover. I'm going to try to throw it back. I am very afraid. You're definitely a lot tougher than me on this. For me, it's more the anticipation rather than the reality.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to try to do this.
Here's to new things.
Here's to new things, sir. You intimidate me just by drinking. Everyone else is going to watch this and be like, really isn't.
As someone who used to really enjoy Fireball, this hits completely differently than your off-the-shelf Fireball whiskey. This, because it is...
While you're doing that, I'm going to try 2 seconds.
It is a bourbon, which is a type of whiskey, but because it is a bourbon and it's drawn out all the other... like the pepper and the cinnamon and the brown sugar and put it all together.
My gums! Does that make sense?
What do you think this would go well with if you were sharing it like a meal from the book?
A stew.
Or like a stew. Okay.
There's a good couple of stews in there that I think it would go really, really well with. Of course, we don't eat a lot of red meat in our house.
Right.
But I definitely could see it going with a really good beef stew or even the venison stew that they have in there. So, especially with the broth being able to help balance things out.
Yeah. So like a beef stew, which is going to have your potatoes and carrots and stuff in it.
Yeah.
some kind of bread on the side, I'm sure.
Yeah, I could see this would be good with like a rye bread. Even that
Dude, rye bread.
The dwarvish
Like the dwarvish meatballs.
the dwarvish meatballs. Yeah, I think that these would go. Those are not the official names of the recipes, but I've been trying to cook more and more out of this book, and it has been absolutely amazing because as fans, we tend to get swept up in things, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's any good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how many things have been bought that were like, oh, we got to have this, and now it's just sitting. It's just a decoration.
This and my Hobbit cookbook were things that were bought for me for Christmas by you. And nerd cookbooks sometimes have this really bad habit of feeling unattainable. They have a ton of ingredients in it that you can't just go pick up. You have to have a specialty store. And if you're someone who's fixing things on a budget, it can be really, 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 really tricky. And again, that inaccessibility to being able to fix the foods. And also when it has a different name and you look at how to do it, it's a moment of, nope, I'm good. Back to the same old, same old. And this... So far, every dish that I have prepared has turned out maybe not exactly like the picture because I don't have a professional photographer there, but it looks like what is presented and it tastes really good. And that's really important to me.
So recently, it was the dumplings, the chicken dumplings.
Those have become a huge favorite.
Those have become a household
That and the
favorite.
bangers and mash.
Bangers and mash are amazing. And the first time it was a bit salty, but you worked on that.
Yeah.
And that was because you followed the recipe to the letter. And
you're always going to adjust stuff for your
palates
flavor,
are different. Everybody's tastes are different.
Drinks.
Yeah. But the meatballs were a recent addition. Those were really good. And the hand pies. The hand pies are from
hand pies are from my Hobbit cookbook. And the other dish that I fixed from the Hobbit cookbook that was really good was the braided onion and cheese bread.
Oh, the bread, yeah.
I really liked that one. I want to do that one again. So for this, I am not a person who ever goes out and drinks. It's just not something I'm interested in. And often when we think of specialty drinks, for some of us, we see dollar signs. But because we're not huge drinkers, we don't keep a lot of stuff in the house to work with. So going out and getting stuff, I'm wandering through the store, like, I have no idea what I'm looking for here. And the lady behind the counter is just like, I'm waiting for them to ask me to leave my bag up front because I'm picking everything up and putting it down. But, and then sometimes you get the person who's behind the counter like, noob. And you can tell that they're staring at you. And I don't want to go up and ask for help because they probably don't care and don't know, and I understand. So I'm walking around looking for the bourbon for this, and I find it. And for me, $20 for a bottle is kind of pricey for something that I don't plan on regularly using. So instead, I got a bunch of those $1.50 bottles, and 5 of those were enough to cover it, and then I didn't have any excess sitting around the house. And yeah, I might fix this again, but this is probably gonna last us. And the book says, it can last up to 3 months.
I was gonna say that'll probably last us a week and a half if we were drinking it every day.
Yeah.
Because it would be just like this much.
I see this being something we add as flavor to game. Have them roll a con roll. But I could see stuff like this definitely adding to the experience. I'm still working on my first one. What would you think would be a good substitute for something like this?
Explain.
Well, let's say that you have individuals in your group. If you're finally able to get together in game and you decide to make it special and provide liquid refreshments to add that extra feel to it, what do you think would be a good substitute for something like this? Or do you think that's something we could play around with?
I think we could play around with it. The first thing that comes to mind, if you're talking about like an alternative, like an
alcohol-free, yeah.
Right. You'd start with like an apple cider. I think would be a good start.
Oh, that is a good idea. What if you were to take an apple cider, infuse it with all the same things, and then at the end, instead of add water to it, because obviously the water was added to help
cut the alcohol.
Sure. Cut it. What if you were to instead put it directly, after straining it, into a pan, heat it up, and add your brown sugar to that?
I think that would be a good direction to take it.
Okay. I think we should try that then. We'll try to come up with alternatives, because maybe you have someone in your group who it's just not their thing. Maybe you have someone who they can't, or maybe you have someone who is staying away from it. So coming up with those alternatives for it as well. I think this is a fun conversation while I stare at this, intimidated.
It smells really good.
When I was first fixing it, it definitely had that nail polish kick you in the face smell. And now you definitely get a lot more of the cinnamon. It smells more like potpourri, without it being like the overly sweet.
For those of you who want to drink potpourri.
So the other day, I got a drink. I got one of those refreshers from Dunkin' Donuts, and I took a drink of it, and I was like, I wasn't thinking. I just took a drink. I was like, this is really good. It's like how sunscreen smells. And the person in the car with me was like, you've thought about drinking sunscreen? I was like, no, that coconut smell, like how you sniff it and you're like, that's really good. Oh, because the coconut milk. Yeah. And just, okay. It was really good. I will admit.
Was this the blueberry or the pomegranate?
It was the blueberry. It was really good. I really like Dunkin' Donuts. Sponsor me. That's
going to have to be a punch in.
Are you telling me how to edit my video while we're recording?
But that one's amazing because the whole sponsor me needs to be a punch in. Sitting there sniffing it is not going to help you get it down.
Okay, so I snorted at it, and the air that came from it, because it's hot and spicy, hit my eyes, and I had a moment of, I maced myself. I'm rolling a deception check.
It'll clear your sinuses.
I am now going to drink this and pretend it does not affect me. Let us see. Words are hard. Let us see how long this can last.
A let us see, by the way, is when you take a lot of vegetables and throw them in the ocean. You can cut that out.
I am completely unaffected by this. Doesn't matter that my lip is currently on fire.
No one can see it. It's red.
Thank you for joining us today. We're not done yet. Hey, I'm actually at the bottom of my glass. I'm proud of me.
Onward.
I'm going to grab us a bottle of water.
No, I'm going to grab us a bottle of water. You can get on to the next section.
Hi. Welcome to part 2. I wanted to talk about this book. For those of you who don't know, I was reached out by the publisher of this book, and they asked if I wanted a copy of it to read and review, and I said, yes, please. The concept is to take fantasy tropes and put it to history. So tropes from fantasy movies, video games, D&D, the hero's tale, thank you so very much, and apply it to actual historical anecdotes. I love history, for those of you who don't know, specifically medieval history, starting from, I don't know, whenever, honestly. This book takes place through the sprawling era that is called the medieval ages. You have the dark ages and so on. I waited patiently for this book to come out. It's a lot of fun. I have really enjoyed reading this book. I will admit that there are certain sections that I want to give an honest review because I feel that's an important thing to do. I have learned a lot from this book. It's not linear in how it deals with timelines. It jumps from place to place. It goes over a plethora of information, and it's all anecdotal. It's all very, very funny. I've learned a lot from it, though, because it talks about history much like I do, where when I tell a story, I do not... Yeah, I'm like, this happened, but first this happened, but oh man, this guy over here did this, and then he did this, and he's related to him. Like, just how you would talk about history instead of the Bueller style talking about history. And I enjoy that. It's a great way for my ADHD brain to be able to function because these are done in bite-sized segments. So even if you're not a history fan, it is done in such a way to where I think non-history fans could get into it. This book is funny. I have literally laughed out loud so many times. You're trying to play games sitting there and
hey, listen to this. Blah, blah, blah.
Or you're
That's
playing
pretty good.
Or you're playing something and I'll just be like and you're like, what? And I'm like, oh, just talking about the sewer systems. So what I like about this is in her author's notes, she says she wrote it as an apology because somebody asked if medieval castles had plans for what to do if their castle was attacked by dragons. And she gave, as she says here, generic lines about the Dark Ages not actually being dark and like was very literal. And then she stopped and was like, my God, that was boring. And I appreciate that. The opening alone explains everything, where it's going over the setting of you could have been this famous person. You could have been this famous person. You could have been this martyr or this saint. But no, you're just you. Just plain you wishing a dragon would attack your village. And then it goes through how a priest comes in and starts telling you these stories and puts a book on your lap and you're like, I don't know how to read. And so it goes over the anecdotal, like, what your life as the hero would have been like. Going over the, oh, you need to go do this thing. You need to go do this, the magical forest. And how that would translate to anecdotal things in history. Now, one of the hard parts I had was, I think as issue you would have, the literal side. When you think forest, what kind of stories would you think of?
What kind of stories would I think of?
Yeah, like historical stories.
Complete blank.
Fair. I was not expecting medieval stories about mechanical animals.
Nope.
Right? There was a specific ruler who had like this grand display of gold trees and stuff. Like there were real things in it too, like real animals and real plants and stuff. But they had robotic animals that moved around and stuff. And it was very common for them to be like, here, have this as a gift. And of course, Europeans were like, cool, we'll take it. And it eventually got to a point, though, like the big middle finger between each other was be like, yeah, thanks. We're going to melt it down for parts. Like getting these amazing mechanical things way back in medieval times. And they're like, we're going to melt it. Like, that is the dumbest flex. But it's very European flex at the time. And it's just, it's amazing to me that that's one of the stories. Or like, did you know that they used to make up female saints to try to tell women how to behave?
I didn't until recently.
Yeah, so one of my favorite stories in this book, it goes over how not to get married as a princess. And it goes over the trope of how to marry the I just kicked things. It goes over the trope of how to get the girl, how to marry the princess, and it's like, you don't. And one of the stories is what to do if you're the princess. And it's about this girl. She's completely made up. And her story is her suitor comes in to find her, and she hides behind a tapestry, grabs a nail behind the tapestry and pulls her feet up so they can't find her. And then she just jumps out a window.
Like, I've found that that's the easiest way to avoid anything, is just jumping out a window.
But these chapters, like, they're not what you expect either. And that's something else you have to expect with this book is if you hear how to get through the magical swamp, don't expect stories of actual swamps. She's talking about the sewer system back in medieval times and how it was a swamp in some places and how some people handled it better than others, and you best hope you don't live downstream from a city. And it was just, for me, I was laughing because she words stuff really, really well. It's really funny. I also enjoy the art that's in it because it's a great mix of, you know, the art the monks did on the side of the books mixed
like
with
the
modern
illuminated manuscript kind of stuff.
That's the wording.
Yeah.
You have your different chapters, and then you have the parts within, which is great. So you have preparing for your quest, at the inn, on the road, hazards along the way, winning the war, and then reaping your reward. So there's a lot to cover in here. So I'm only going to go over preparing for your quest. Now, if you're familiar with any form of storytelling, I'm sure everyone's heard of the hero's journey. They've used it in everything, of course, King Arthur, Star Wars. The reluctant hero, even Harry Potter uses it. You have your reluctant hero, you have a destiny, you have the side characters that help, and then you have the big bad and all of those little things. Like there's a full list that goes with the hero's quest. So you have, for preparing for your quest, how to find the chosen one, how to not marry the prince. That's the one I was talking about.
Yep. How
to find your mentor, how to train a wizard, how to dress for fighting evil. But how not to marry the prince. Oh, Christina, by the way, was the name of the young lady who hid behind the tapestry.
Christina.
Oh, it goes over. There's a certain word that is used for those stories. It's hag something. That's what it is. The Legends of the Virgin Martyrs. And there's like an entire collection of them. Then you also have like how they used magic. And there's one story in particular where I was like, that is a warlock. Where he reads a book and he brags about being able to use all these different branches of magic. And he's just like, yeah. By the way, I'm also a monk. And like the church, the monastery specifically that he was a part of thought he was just obnoxious. So they sent him away to go learn somewhere else. And he starts claiming to have had like all these dreams, go figure, of like God going, look around and find out. Eventually, he decides not to use it anymore because, you know, getting punched by Jesus is bad. And so he decides to use this evil book, though, to teach his sister the ABCs.
That's what I use.
So she starts having the same nightmares. But really horrible, terrible, tortured dreams. Being able to learn how to publicly speak, sing beautifully, and hey, you can read now. Like, I'm like, did the bad dreams just come from studying too hard? This book, if you are a history fan,
check it out.
And you need something like before you go to bed to de-stress, whatever, try out some D&D drinks. As someone, I used to consume a ton of books, kind of pulled away from reading as much, and I'm trying to get back into it. I have a stack of books that I want to get through. This has actually been really, really easy to get through. I will say that some of the wording, I don't know if it's me having processing issues, but I did sometimes get a little bit lost, and I would have to reread it 3-4 times. And then I would have to go back a page to see who she was talking about. And that could just be me.
I think that's a lot of people. I don't know how many times growing up, because of being neurodivergent, reading 3 pages in and going, how did I get here, and having to go back. And even though reading, at reading levels much higher than what I was currently in, there's always that issue of looking ahead, or my brain's actually doing this, and then when you do go back and read it, oh, I remember this, retaining it, but in that one particular moment, no idea until you go back through it. And I think that's a lot of people. It's really exciting seeing the different things that you've come across, because throughout the time that we've been known each other, there's so much that you've taught me when it comes to history, but this particular book, with you learning more stuff, it gives us more to talk about on that front.
And it makes me look up stuff too, because I want to know the full scope of the subject. When you find something that makes you want to look up and learn more about it, that's always a good feeling.
The teacher that got stabbed by his students.
That is a true thing. Like, apparently there was a teacher who, I don't know if he pissed people off or what. This hair right here. And the way it's written is very Douglas Adams style, with that tongue-in-cheek humor, which I really, really appreciate. It makes me think of Monty Python, the subtitles for the moose at the bottom. It very much makes me think of that, which makes me happy. And there's this whole story that goes over, there was this teacher who was teaching his students and managed to bring them all together by stabbing him to death with their pens. I don't have to worry about being demonetized because I'm not monetized. So, but you ended up Googling the rest of the story, and like the whole thing is actually a moment of, oh, this is so much worse than what was in the book.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even the same name. So again, history is a game of telephone, where certain things can be attributed to one individual, and then somewhere along the way it gets muddled and put into another. And you would have all sorts of stories made about stuff. Snakes got turned into dragons to try to up the ante. And there was a lot of that. So names sometimes got switched, not to protect the identity of the person, but because they needed a made-up saint to complete a task. And it happened a lot. So, like, finding those little strings on the pegboard and where they connect to is very tricky. And I honestly give a lot of props to these historians, where it is their job to follow those very confusing lines all over the place. And it's why I enjoy reading stuff like this, is when you look it up on your own, when you're done reading it, not only are you going to feel like, oh, I know the full story now, but you're going to see all the different sides that it comes from. But it is fascinating to see how, with the evidence presented, how it's interpreted.
You mentioned earlier in that book about the Crusades.
Yeah.
And something that keeps getting left out of the Crusades is Prince John. Just like King Richard was looking for the Holy Grail, I provide you with the wallet. And that's part 3.
I've got a dirty thumb. I almost drooled.
I think that's a good spot to say goodnight.
Bye, guys. Hey, remember, be responsible with this especially. Have fun learning new things and do something that's going to make you laugh. Thank you for being a part of these videos. I very much enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy this too. We're going to try to do more videos like this. I actually have a ton of unedited videos in my backlog because when I went to edit them, I went, this sucks. And I need to just redo them now. So thank you for your continued support. Hope to do this more often. And remember, you got this. Bye.